Welcome to Plot Recon, where thrillers get tactical. I'm your host, Evan Graver. Today, we learn exactly who is John Galt. No, I'm not joined by Ayn Rand, but by John Galt Robinson, a thriller author and emergency medical physician based in South Carolina. He is the
Mhm.
author of the Shannock Tabrizi thriller series, writing action-driven fiction rooted in high-stakes conflict and geopolitical tension. Welcome to the show, John.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Um, so I always start off asking, how did you get involved in writing thrillers? What was your um, catalyst to get started?
Well, that's a great question. I never planned on writing at all. In fact, in high school, I was a math and science guy, football, lacrosse player. If you assigned a 100-word essay, I would have cringed, and figured out how many adjectives I could throw in to get me quickly up to 100 words. I love to read, though. In seventh grade, we started having assigned reading, and I read The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton, and I was hooked on reading. I absolutely loved it, and it just moved on to April Morning, and then in high school, I started reading much more. I was lifeguarding in the summers, and it was a hotel right by the waterfalls at Niagara Falls. I grew up right near Niagara Falls, and during the day, the tourists would be out, so the pool would be pretty much dead. So I started bringing books. My parents were big readers. My brother was a big reader, and I just started pulling books off the shelf. I can remember reading Where Eagles Dare by Alistair MacLean, and I couldn't put it down. And then my brother just started handing me books, and I read all kinds of series and everything. And then the fire exploded in spring of 1987. I was a Navy ROTC midshipman at Georgia Tech, and somebody said, "Oh, there's this new author called Tom Clancy. You need to read this book. It's called The Hunt for Red October. You're going to love it. You're a Navy guy." And it just took me to another level. And so I've been an avid reader my whole life, and I married an avid reader, and our youngest daughter's an avid reader. And I don't know, I think it was about 11 years ago, they started telling me I should write books. And I'm like, what? And, I'm blessed with a beautiful, godly wife, and she would like me to be home 24/7. She's like, yeah, start writing novels. Maybe you'll go big and you could be home all the time. And I laughed at first. I was like, I'm just not a writer, guys. And over the course of a year, they kept saying it, and it started to grow on me. And I was like, yeah, that might be fun to do in my spare time. That was kind of what Tom Clancy did. He was an insurance adjuster, and I was like, "Well, maybe I'll think about it." And then I just got serious, like, yeah, I'd like to do that, but I just don't want to reproduce what everybody else reads. At that time, I was already reading Vince Flynn and David Baldacci and Brad Thor and all the big names, and loved all their stuff and couldn't get enough of it. But I'm like, "Ugh, every good idea has been caught." But then I got more serious about it, and I would even pray about it once in a while. Then I would go back on the back shelf and wouldn't think about it. And it was July of 2018 at 4 o'clock in the morning. I woke up from a vivid dream, and the first book was in my head. The characters, a lot of the sequences of the plot. It was just so vivid. And most of the time, I wake up from a dream and I'll remember it a little bit and forget it an hour later. So I literally got out of bed, and my wife, I'll never forget, she's like, "What are you doing?" Because I never wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I sleep like a log. I was like, "I've got a book in my head. I'm going to write it down." And I came into this room right here. I pulled out a legal pad and I wrote about 2 pages of notes, descriptions, and all that. And went back to bed. And the next day, I went and looked at it. It's like, yeah, this will work. And then the research started. My two main characters, as you mentioned, are Joe O'Shannock. He's a Navy SEAL. Christy Tabrizi, she's the ER physician. Well, I can write ER all day long, but people don't want to just read medicine. So I wanted to make it more military action. And the medicine part is easy because that's what I do. But the Navy SEAL part, that was elusive. I wanted to be career military. As I said, I was Navy ROTC, but I never actually served time. I broke my ankle. I was medically disqualified, but I read tons on that, and I was very taken by the SEAL community and what they do, the silent professionals. But that makes it hard to get the information too, because just that they're the silent professionals. So I had to start doing tons of research and trying to develop contacts, and it took me a year and a half to write the first book, but I did it, and I absolutely loved the process, and I was hooked at that point. And the next book came while I was querying the first book. Uh, I can remember it was summer of 2021 because I finished the first book right at the end of, I'm sorry, it was summer of 2020. COVID was going on, and I was home and I was sending out queries to every agent in the country, in Canada, and I was starting to work on the UK. And I just got tired and I took a nap literally on this couch right next to me here. And I woke up with the next book in my head, and it's just taken a life from there. I really haven't dreamt any new books, but the baseline was set with the characters and the stories. And Joe and Christy pretty much can do anything. They're an amazing couple, of protagonists, dual protagonists, and there's just tons of stories in them. And now I've got a second series. I've got two books written in that, and actually now, really, right before I talked to you, I was putting down the grassroots basics of characters for a new series I'm thinking about. So, yeah, it's never planned on doing it, and now it's. I don't want to say it's an obsession, but let's leave it as a passion, if we can say that. But yeah, absolutely love it.
Once you get that first book out, it just becomes a life of its own. The ideas start to flow, the characters develop, and
Absolutely.
you can't go a day or a minute without seeming to think about the plot, what the next book is going to be about, and so it's a fun thing to do, and it's really you know you have a unique story on how you got into writing. So
Yeah, no formal training, but I will say I've learned a lot in the 8+ years now since I started writing, and I've started taking a lot of. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I read books on better writing. My first four novels were not well edited with the publisher that I was with at the time. It was a small publisher. We had a parting the ways. I got a new editor who's fantastic, and he's really put me through graduate school on writing to the point that I was like, hey, we've got to take my first four books off, and I need to rewrite these. Not change the stories or the plots, but just the editing needed improvement, and then the craft of writing needed to be improvement. So that's when I knew I was hooked. I was like, okay, if I'm willing to do that, then I really am uh, hopelessly into this profession now. And I'm sure you can experience it too. My characters are like real people to me now. I've never could imagine that, but I mean, I've had dreams with them in my dreams, and they're like real people to me. And that's at the end of the day, rather than read, I'd rather get back into writing and spend time with my characters. And I still read. I read a lot, love to read, but I'm even more into my writing and hanging out with my characters. It's like another world. It's an escape, and you can't describe it unless you do it. But I'm sure you can relate to that.
absolutely, I have a hard time reading fiction now. I've written
Mhm.
so much of it. You live
Sure.
with the characters, and it's like I don't know. It's hard for me. It's hard to read fiction now and just enjoy to really enjoy it. So
I still enjoy it. I still love read, and but now I read a little bit more critically, especially when you read some really good authors. Like right now, I'm
mhm.
reading Hava by Tosca Lee, and I've never really read anything in that genre. She's not really thriller, but my goodness, she could take history and just get some stuff that you might have known about, and then she just can illustrate it and put you in there, immerse it, and so many things you never thought about or experienced. And she has such a way to bring it to life and make you feel what those characters are feeling. And it just makes you think, wow, I wish I could write like that. So there's always other authors. I look at that and I look at some of the great authors and how they write, how they ground a scene, how they develop their characters. And it's really good. And I can remember when I first sat down to write my book, that was the first thing I thought about was you've got to have great characters. Because all my favorite books, it's always been the character. It's Jack Ryan, it's Mitch Rapp, it's Scott Harveth. If you think about the great TV shows, Seinfeld was a show about nothing. It was all about the characters. I can remember uh, reading Lee Child's first novel, his first Jack Reacher novel. The whole forward was about how he developed the character and what he put into it, what a good character should have. And it was a good take home for me to read that and learn that. And I hope I've at least learned enough to make my characters appealing to others.
it that's always the hope. So I wanted to jump into the publishing aspect of it. You did go with KCM Publishing at the begin with,
Correct. Yes.
and you said you did since parted ways with them.
Yeah, and it was mutual. When I signed up with them, it was end of 2020. The guy that runs it, he was a vice president with Associated Press, and this was a side publishing gig that he had going on, and he had published quite a bit, and he was great to work with. And he said from the beginning, he said, this is kind of an early entry for you. He said, if your writing gets to the point that you feel like you need to try to stretch for bigger horizons, let me know, and I'll return your rights to you. It was kind of a boutique type thing. He really gets the book published for you. They do the editing and all that. Um, but beyond that, they really can't market it or anything. And he was open and upfront about that. But so yeah, my first four published with him, and then I got with this new editor. He was like, "Yeah, I think we can get you in with something bigger," and that's what we're in the process of doing now. But you need to have a break away from that publisher. You need to get your rights returned to you, and that was when I said, "Well, let's rewrite these books too at the same time." And he also recommended I start the new series. So I have two books written in the new series. It's my new Nate Kelsey series. So we're in the process of querying right now. We are very close to having a deal. Nothing's on paper yet, but it's very exciting. And at the same time, we've got a third series that we're breaking out with as well. So there's a lot in the works. I'd love to get moving, but the publishing industry moves at its own pace too. But Michael Fabiano with KCM Publishing was very amiable, very good about when I told him what I was doing, and he didn't put up a fuss at all. He returned the rights, so I can't have anything but good to say about him. He's very good, and he told me up front what he could do and what he couldn't do. So no negatives on KCM Publishing. It was very amiable the whole way.
All right. So you parted ways with the publisher.
Mhm.
I was looking at your Amazon page. You only have paperbacks up, right?
That's for now. That's why we're trying to get with a larger platform so that we can go hardback, paperback. I did have ebook. Like I said, I had to take everything down because it was published through KCM Publishing. So um, that's what right now nothing's really available on Amazon. I think you might be able to pick up the paper books, but I don't even know if you can at this point. But the next step is to get with a bigger platform so we can be on audio as well. I've had a lot of people approach me about audio, and some said you can do it on your own, but I don't think the quality's there. So that's why my editor and I are really pushing for one of these bigger publishers. So it's been a while since I've put anything out, but I think if I can get with a bigger platform, it'll be well worth the wait.
Okay. Um, so I mean that kind of you know what are you so if you can't get onto a bigger publisher
Mhm.
or get a traditional deal, are you looking at self-publishing?
Yeah, yeah. At that point, I would do that for sure, and
So
then go ahead.
So I was gonna say, what is your timeline for that? What is because you can spend years querying with people and then never really get any traction.
I'd say the timeline is within a few months. Yes,
Okay,
like I said, we're on the verge of something that looks very promising right now that should happen within hopefully the next few weeks. Certainly, that could stretch out to a couple months. We'll see how that works out. But if we get a flat out no, then I'm moving on.
okay,
Yeah, but we've
um,
got some very good interest and a big possibility opening up. I really can't speak to that right now because there's involvement with a couple of different publishers, but I don't want to speak out ahead of term and then nothing happens and it falls flat on my face. But yeah, I can always fall back to independent, and there's nothing wrong with that. And there you have great autonomy. You can do what you want, and you don't have to please the publishers, and you can write what you want. And I have a lot of possibilities with that, but I would still like to get on with a big platform if I can.
all right. So jumping back to the writing side of it, how are you managing to write and do the medicine and fit everything into your day?
Everybody asks that question. It's a great question. Fortunately, I only work 3 shifts a week. I work 3 10-hour shifts. And so I'm off 4 days a week. And I also moonlight covering orthopedic clinics. And basically, I'm just a lifeguard there. It's outpatient surgery centers. At the end of the day, when all the patients are in the operating room, they're in recovery. The anesthesiologist, he wants to go home. So they pay me to stick around just in case a patient crashes. And thankfully, it's rare. And usually, if it is something, it's usually minor, but that's usually a good paid block of time to work on the novels in a little cubicle where nobody's bothering you and it's uninterrupted time, and I can get a lot done then. And I write at home. I write right here at this desk, or more often than not, I'll pick up my laptop and I'll sit next to my wife right on the couch. We're empty nesters. She's an avid reader. She'll be reading a book right next to me, and I'll be writing right next to her. And then it's just time management. We don't watch TV, with the exception of right now. We've been paying attention to the Olympics. We love the Olympics, but the majority of the time, neither one of us watches TV. We're both readers, so it just fits right into our lifestyle. It's just, instead of reading, I'm punching keys. But uh,
So
she'll,
does your wife read your books?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, she's my best critic. In fact, she saved my bacon on my second book. I don't want to give away any spoilers here, but my one of my co-protagonists, Christy Tabrizi, and she's just an amazing person. But there was a scene in the book, and I wrote it with with an intention in mind, and it still worked out the way I wanted. But it was the way she acted in it. My wife's like, Christy would never act like this. She's acting like she's self-centered and doesn't care about anybody else. And I reread it. I'm like, oh my goodness, yes, this is not her at all. She would never do something like this. And so, yeah, she reads with a critical eye. One of my best critics, and I value her opinion tremendously. She's been a great help.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That you can have that partnership. My wife, I've written 26 books. I think my wife has read 3 of them.
yeah.
So which isn't
Well,
bad. So I don't have to worry about her critiquing me and be like, oh,
Well, they're always our best critic, but my wife is my sharpening stone. I wouldn't be a doctor today if it wasn't for her. I wouldn't be an author today if it wasn't for her. So, I thank God every day. He put an awesome woman in my life. But yeah, she'll read. She reads to be entertained. But in fact, my first book, she said, I read it, I liked it, but the first third, she had a hard time getting through because I wrote it very much in a Tom Clancy fashion. I love Clancy. That's what I wanted to write like. But I've since learned, especially from my editor, nobody wants to read Tom Clancy anymore. We are now in the TikTok generation. Characters have to be short. They have to be sharp. They have to move. They have to leave the person hanging. They have to pick right up on the next chapter. And, I got very descriptive, very deep in the weeds on some things. And so when I went back last year and revised it, I cut a lot of that fat out. I changed a lot of it. And my wife was the first one to say, thank God. A lot of people enjoyed it. The book was very well received, but keeping with modern times, especially if I want to give it a big platform, the agents and the publishers are not looking for Clancy type writing anymore. If you're Clancy, you can write whatever you want, or the people writing for the estate. But beyond that, for new authors, they're not going to pick you up. So yeah, I had to go back and revise that. But the story was good. She enjoyed the story. The characters just didn't like the longer chapters and descriptions and all that. And looking back, it definitely needed to be changed. So I'm looking forward to getting that re-released. Like I said, hopefully with a bigger platform. But if I go independent or even hybrid, I might have one series picked up and the other one not, and then I'll hybrid, one with a platform and one independent, and that works out well too. There's a lot of authors that do that, and getting your name recognition with one series helps sell your independent series. So we'll see how it works out.
yeah. I had a question I was going to ask you in the middle of that, now, but well, I can't remember what it was. But um, so, what is your writing? I mean, obviously, you've talked about faith right here in this podcast. How
Mhm.
much faith are you is writing in your books? Are you leaning towards the Christian perspective pretty heavily in there?
No, not at all. In fact, that was intentional. Yes, I am a Christian. And one of my characters, Christy, she's a Christian too. So there's an element in that. But Joe Oshanik is the antithesis. He's an agnostic, pretty much atheist. He's a very honorable and likable Navy SEAL, inspirational in many ways. But his position is he's seen so much evil in the world that he can't believe there's a God. And he comes from a Christian family, but he just has rejected it all. It's just his anger and everything he sees. So I intentionally wrote that. I can't not put some of my own Christian faith in there, but I intentionally wrote it to be subtle. Just every now and then it's sewn in a little bit through Christie's dialogue, but I wrote it for a wide audience. I wrote my books with the intention of being enjoyed by the most hardcore atheists. They've got a lifeline in Joe. They can relate to Joe. They understand his objections, and that's one of the most common objections you hear from people that don't have faith is they can't believe in a God that would allow so much evil in the world. And it's a good question. and I think there are good answers for it, and it does get addressed in my books, and you can take it or leave it. But it's not. I'm not hitting you over the head with the Bible. I'm not clobbering you with faith. That 99% of the book, there's no faith element at all. There's just little subtle bits here and there. And that's all I ever intended it to be. I wanted a wide readership. My new series is the same way. And then this new series that we're looking at is probably going to be pretty much all secular the whole straight way through, just to go a different path. But so it's there, but it's what I would at best call subtle Christian fiction. But
No,
um,
there is a niche for that, so
yeah,
you can fall into that. It's pretty easy. I think that's where Ryan Steck likes to put his books. So
yeah.
I don't know if you're a fan of Ryan or have read any of his work, but that's
They're
his
got all his books right
publishers are.
behind me. Huge fan, good friends with him. Talked to him earlier today. He's a great guy and
Yeah,
has had a lot of influence on my writing as it is. And his books are fantastic. I'd say mine are a little bit more faith content. Christie's a little bit more vocal. And with her and Joe thrust into the same scene, especially in the first book, reluctantly, and at first they don't really get along. So the dialogue flows out of that. And they kind of have a few, I don't want to say arguments, but discussions about things of faith. And the whole purpose is just to, answer each other's side or have each other's side have their questions asked and answered. And, it puts a pebble in somebody's shoe, makes them think. That's all I was trying to do, not force anything on anybody. And I certainly don't want to detract from the story. The story is the big thing. These books are meant to entertain, and they're meant to inspire. But yeah, we're going to address a few issues. And if people want to take something home from that, that's great. And like I said, they've got a lifeline on either side. The Christian reader has Christy, the secular reader has Joe, and both are likable. No matter what your faith background is, you'll love both these characters. They're fantastic. I love them both too, as well as Joe's sidekick, Mike or Matt Ramsey, and there's just a whole cast of characters around. There's a lot of fun people. And the other thing is create an antagonist that everybody wants to hate, and I've got those too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I got to ask this: how much Ayn Rand have you read?
I've only read Atlas Shrugged. I've read it twice. Obviously, that's where my name came from. My
Yeah.
dad read that book shortly after it came out. I think it was published in 1957. And he read the book and said, if I ever have a son, I'm naming him John Galt Robinson. Well, then he had four daughters. So I wasn't born until 67, but that's the name I got. And I knew that's where my name came from. I never read the book for whatever reason. I was a big reader, but it never really fell into my to be read list. And I was in medical school, and my oldest sister gave it to me for Christmas one time. And she said, "You need to read this book. This is where your name came from. You better read it." And she has self described herself as the queen of our universe. Well, when the queen speaks, the siblings respond. So I did read it, and now I can see why my dad named me John Galt. And I've since read it twice. My youngest daughter has read it, so it's neat. And when I got with KCM Publishing, Michael Fabiano saw my full name, and he said, "Hey, normally I don't put an author's middle name on a cover." Said, "But I think we need to do that in your case." And I totally agree with it. And so it's stuck there, and it does catch people's eyes, especially people that are familiar with her works. And whether you agree with it or not, she certainly makes some good points.
Yeah.
Which again, I have to filter her. She's an atheist. I have to filter it through my biblical worldview, but I still think there's a lot of relevance and a lot of truth in what she wrote. And I think that's one of the longest books ever written, but you can't put it down. It was fantastic, a fantastic read, and I've read it twice, and I may read it again some other day. But now that I've met so many authors, I want to read their material too,
Hmm.
and now I can't keep up with all that. So I don't know when I'll get back to it again, but yeah, that's the story.
Yeah, I've read it. Atlas Shrugged, and there was a section in there. A guy was giving a speech, and I think it was 30 pages long, and I skipped like 25 of it.
Oh yeah, that was her friend from Argentina. Francisco D'Anconia. He gave
Yes.
that big, huge. It was the third. I never forget it. He was giving a big, huge speech on money, but yeah, it's like you wish you could condense it to one page and have everybody read it because everything he said was so dead on. But yeah, she took a long time to put. You can't write like that anymore.
No, you can't. I really think that Brad Thor was the one that changed the writing dynamic with by
Hmm.
adding, having a hook at the end of each chapter. shortening things up a little bit and really, making his character drive forward. And I think that, he just set the page for all of us. So,
And he's one of the best. No getting around that. He is one of the best. That Scott Harvath series is every year the new one comes out, and I can't wait. It was like when Tom Clancy used to put out a new one; you just couldn't wait.
yeah, he's
Yeah.
a fabulous author. I've read all of his books.
Hmm.
So, th- let me ask you the final question that I ask
Sure.
everybody. So, um, what do you want people to take away from your work when they're done reading your book?
Well, I alluded to it earlier. The more than anything else, I read for pleasure. Doing what I do as a doctor, I just need an escape each day, and I just want to get into a good story. So that's first and foremost what I want people to get. It's just something that they just enjoy, whether it's like a nice drive through the woods or or an action or whatever it is. I want them to just be able to get an escape and look forward to it and just enjoy my characters like I enjoy them and enjoy hanging out with them. Even in Brad Thor's books, what's he written, 23 or something like that now?
Mm-hmm.
And it's more about being with Scott Harvath and Nicholas the Troll. I look forward to seeing those guys, and I can't even tell you what half the books are about, and I've read every single one. It's the characters, and so to me, it's just getting back in with the characters and going on an adventure with them. And if that's all people take out of it, that's great. If there's something in my characters that inspires them, well, that's a bonus. And I have, like I said, I plant little seeds of faith, truth in there, and I've had people email me or text me. I had one friend from back home said, "You know what? I've never read the Bible now, but now I want to because of your books. What Bible would you recommend?" And that was huge. So things like that are I find fantastic. So if I can get somebody just to think a little bit, or if it just puts some type of a positive spin on somebody's life, or if it leads them to Christ, all that is to me fantastic. But first and foremost, I just want people to enjoy the book for the sake of reading, because we need more people reading. Reading is such a good exercise for the mind. And whether it's for pleasure or whether it's nonfiction or whatever it might be, I think if we had more people reading instead of just being influenced by their screen all day long, I think our world would be a much better place. And if I can have a little bit of impact on it, I think that's a win-win.
It's an amazing testimony right there.
Well, thank you.
And that's a wrap on this episode of Plot Recon, where thrillers get tactical. Thanks to John Galt Robinson for coming on and talking through his writing high stakes suspense while balancing a career in emergency medicine. You can learn more about John at johngaltrobinson.com. If this episode hit the mark, share it, leave a review, and subscribe wherever you listen. I'm Evan Graver. Thanks for listening. Stay sharp, write hard, and keep your fiction tactical.
I love it. That's a good line.